Hello and welcome to Describing Relationships in Tables. This is Chapter 1, Lesson 2 from the Nelson Math Focus textbook, and this is Grade 6 Mathcasts with Mr. Burko. Our goal today is to describe how the numbers in one column of a table of values relate to the numbers in the other column. Now remember, table of values is a table that has a whole bunch of numbers in it that is based on the data in something that we're looking at. And columns, of course, are a list of numbers from top down, and you might contrast that with rows, which is numbers going from left to right. In our textbook on page 8, we have a character named Daniel, and he's watching a dance. Now, there are 10 parts to the dance, and he notices that in the first part, 2 dancers come out. Now, there in his textbook, he represents these dancers with little blocks, little cubes, linking cubes we call them. And I've just got a picture of dancers here, and so I'm going to use the same colors. He uses yellow cubes, and we're going to use yellow dancers. In part 2, he notices that 3 more dancers come on, and then for every part after that, 3 more dancers come on, and he gets to part 4 and 3 more dancers, so he has a total of 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, which is 8. Now this continues until part 10, and so our question is how many dancers will be on the stage by the end of part 10? Without just watching and counting them, can we predict that? He writes a table of values, and this is our dance. The part number is here, so part 1 we saw 2 dancers, and you'll remember that that's the 2 dancers there. Then in part 2 we had 5 dancers, so you'll see here there's 5 dancers, okay? And then so on. Part 3 had 8, part 4 had 11. What he noticed was that the part 2 is 5, which means 2 plus 3. 2 is the original dancer, 3 is the number of dancers getting on the stage. Then 2 plus 3 plus 3, and then 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, and that's what he ends up in part 4. So he creates a pattern rule based on this information. The number of groups of 3 to add is 1 less than the part number. Okay, so in other words, the number of groups that you add is 1 less than the part number that you're looking at. So for instance, if it's part number 4, that means you're going to add 3 groups of 3. Okay? And so for part 10, he predicts that you will add 9 groups of 3 dancers. Why 9 groups of 3? Because 9 is 1 less than 10. So according to your pattern rule, it's 1 less than the part number. So if it's part 10, it's 9 groups of 3 dancers. A formula for this with numbers is 9 times 3, calculated, then plus 2, it equals 29. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. If you need to listen to it again, you're sure welcome to stop the presentation and rewind, or you can go back to the beginning and listen from the beginning. But we're going to move on now, and we're going to listen to Mai's rule. Mai is a character on page 9, and she just has a slightly different way of thinking about this. She knows that there's 3 groups, or there's groups of 3 added on every single time. So she decides to multiply it by 3. She knows that this isn't going to get her the right answer because the first part was actually just 2 dancers. So she's really just doing this to see what happens. So in part number 1, if she multiplies that by 3, it's 3. In part number 2, multiplied by 3, it equals 6. Part number 3 times 3 is 9, and so on. Alright, so what she ends up with is the same number of dancers as Daniel had, because she's watching the same dance. She's just calculating it in a way that makes that sense to her. So 1 times 3, she notices that there's 2 dancers on the stage at the first part. When she multiplies 2 times 3, she notices there's 5 dancers. She sees a pattern here. This is always 1 more than this column. So this 6, 1 more than 5, this 9, 1 more than 8, 12 is 1 more than 11. She predicts that if she goes on to part 10, that the number in this column will always be 1 more than the number in this column. So she creates a pattern rule based on the evidence here. Multiply the part number by 3 and then subtract 1. So this part number times 3, take away 1, it works. 1 times 3 is 3, take away 1, it equals 2. So for part 10, she predicts that if it's part 10, she multiplies it by 3 and then she takes away 1, it equals 29. Both ways to solve the problem work, but they're slightly different. So what you should take from this lesson is that you can figure out a way that works for you, and you should still be able to get the right answer. Just find something that makes sense for you. And if neither of these made sense, you might have your own way of doing it. Thanks for joining me.